Are you down, did it down, did it down, did it down, down, down? Down, did it down, did it down, did it down, down, down? Are you...
Okay, so welcome to Comionicaast, a podcast about communities. Today I have a very special guest, world's guru of online communities. Don't laugh. Hi, Richard.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm hot. It's really hot here.
Not quite like in London.
London is like grey. Like every morning you get to look outside the window to see what shade of grey it's going to be. Here it's just really hot.
But at least you got some sun, which makes you smile.
It makes me smile when I'm like indoors.
In the aircon.
Yeah, we're in like the air conditioning for sure.
So I'll say a few words about you.
Sure.
Richard is the founder of FeverBee, an international community consultancy, and the author of Buzzing Communities. Richard's clients have included Google, Facebook, Wikipedia, EMC, and many more. Prior to FeverBee, Richard interned with Seth Godin in New York. It's a real pleasure to have you here. And I'm sure our listeners have more than a few things to learn from you.
I hope so.
Actually, I want to start with Seth Godin because
Sure.
I think this is something interesting that our listeners can study.
Sure.
What did you do exactly as an intern there?
Sure. So I can tell you some of it, but I have signed a document, so there's limits on what I can say.
Of course, yeah.
So what I did with Seth, when I began working with him, he was just finishing up a book called Tribes. And part of the philosophy of the book was that we all have to lead now. Like marketing is about leadership today. The way you get attention is to lead, is to figure out what people want, to figure out where they need to go. And as part of that, he was also developing the Tribes network as well. So for people that were going to lead tribes would join their own network called Tribes, but with 3 eyes. At the same time, he also had a project called Squidoo. And I was working on a sub-brand of that project for him. But I mean, for me, it wasn't about the projects itself, although they were very interesting to work on. Mm-hmm. The key thing was just getting an understanding of how to think with a level of clarity that most people, I don't feel, have. So Seth would be very interesting in the way that he'd approach any project, the way that he'd push back against something that I might propose to him. And the questions would be really great. It'd be questions like, who are the first 10 people that you're going to reach? What are you going to tell? What are you going to tell them? Why will they listen? What are they going to do? How are they going to share it with friends? So thinking about it at that level, because if you get that stuff right in the beginning, it's so much easier to do all the other stuff later on. So it's common, for example, to launch a community, a group, or whatever you're doing, and not think about how people are going to share it, how they're going to send it to their friends, and then try to figure that out much later on. But if you build it in the very beginning, it's so much easier to do this. So a lot of the techniques that we still use today came from Seth. I mean, we've adapted them and we've chopped them up a bit over the years. But that philosophy of always thinking about who are the first 10 people? What are we going to tell them? What makes this remarkable to this group? How are they going to spread the message? Are critical to the work that we do today.
And how did you end up working with him? Like, did you just emailed him, hey, I want to work with you?
Sort of, yeah. This was back in 2009, 2008, I think. And he's doing a internship then, and I just missed the cut of that. And so I reached out to him afterwards because he did like a virtual internship as well, which didn't really work that well. And so I sent him a message and we set up a call, and that's how it worked. And he was great to work with. It was an experience that really helped me. Even though the project I was working on didn't go as well as what I hoped it would, the lessons that I learned from working with him were terrific. Like, I really enjoyed it.
Cool. Now, let me ask you, what was the first community you managed or you created?
Sure. The first community I created was in the video gaming space. So when I was 15 years old, I got really interested into playing these games online. And I quickly found out I wasn't so interested, or I wasn't so good at playing the games, but I was really interested in the communities that were growing up around every game. So every game would have its own online community as well. But then there were also communities for people that played that game in the UK, in the USA, in Russia, in Israel, or wherever. Like every community had its own great game, and I mean, every game had its own community, and that was it was an amazing thing to do. So I got involved in managing a couple of communities in the UK in the gaming space. And what I think some of us back then were very lucky enough to notice is that the same elements are in every online community. And if you can identify and if you can isolate what those things are, you can effectively use that as a blueprint to build any number of communities that you ever want to build. And that's what we've been doing over the last 10 years or so. We've been helping organizations understand things like the sense of community, things like motivation, and all these things that they kind of get, but they haven't really spent enough time figuring it out. Too many organizations focus on the technology first, especially in the digital world. They focus on the technology first, and it's important to get that right. But it's nowhere near as important as figuring out what's going to motivate someone fundamentally to join and visit and participate in that community.
So basically the video game community became kind of your template?
Yeah, to a certain degree. The hard thing was that I went to university as well, and I spent a year out working with a marketing company, and we had a client that wanted to build a community. And that was the point, I think, when I realized that the same things that work in the video gaming world also work in almost any type of community. Now, for sure, you have to adapt that, you have to change that, you have to do all those wonderful things with that. But the same things are fundamentally there. And even today, I mean, we understand much more about what those things are, but they're still present in every type of community that we see.
You know, I want to ask you, what is the ideal community in
the
your
ideal
opinion?
community?
But before that,
Sure.
What is a community? Let's start with that, I think.
Sure. I think a community is a group of people who have developed relationships around a common interest, a very strong common interest that they have. And that's different from, say, an audience. Like, I might go to see my favorite band perform at some event. Mm-hmm. But I'm not automatically in their community by the sheer act of going to that event. If I start interacting with other people that also go, if I start building relationships with them, that's what I think a community is. And that's very important because it means a lot of the things that get called a community actually aren't. It's just people that are listening to someone update their blog or their Instagram or just talk to an audience, and that's not a community. I think the value that we provide is in figuring out the best ways to help our audience build relationships with one another. So it's not just us connecting with them, it's them connecting with one another. And it sounds really obvious, but I think that we forget that. I think that we spend so much time trying to figure out how do we build relationships with each member of our audience, or how do we engage this person and that person. We don't spend time thinking about how to get these people to engage with one another. And that's what the secret sauce of our work is.
Right. So maybe instead of asking you what is the ideal community,
Sure.
give an example for a really good community.
A really good community. Wow, there's so many. Do we mean the online or the offline?
Can be both.
Sure. I'm so tempted to use all the amazing examples I've seen over the last week here. Like in the offline world, the work that you're doing. There's someone yesterday who was talking about I've forgotten the name. It was like the Million Woman March for Peace, who does amazing work in getting people to join, connect, and march for peace. And it's just the most incredible thing. And the video of it you can find online was amazing. And I felt that was a very strong community. The way they're building it, the way they're spreading it, the way that other people are taking on responsibility for different parts of that. In the online world, there's so many. And there's so many different types. Things like a customer support community with Apple will have. I'm trying to think of one I like. I think SAP, as apparently it's called here, do a really amazing job with the work that they do, because they've managed to figure out how to build a very strong sense of community, how to get people to share lots of knowledge with one another, how to keep their top members actively engaged with their mentoring programs and the efforts that they put in. So I think all those things are really powerful, and those are the kinds of communities that I think we can learn a lot from.
It sounds like a key word is engagement.
It's engagement to a certain degree, but engagement has to be understood in the right way. So a lot of people think of engagement as what people do. They click, they like, they share, they post, they comment, they do all those great things. Right. But that's not what engagement is. Engagement is the psychological act of being engaged with the issue. So if I am talking to you, I'm engaged with you right now because my mind is mentally there. It's not a case of just doing whatever action. It's not a case of the words that I'm saying. It's that psychology behind it. And very often we focus far too much on trying to get people to take an action, that click, like, share, or whatever, instead of trying to get people to feel the right way about the community, instead of trying to make people understand that they are fundamentally a part of that community. They feel that strong sense of community. And a sense of community is really critical to what we do. It's possible to take almost any group of individuals today and build a very strong sense of community among them if you understand how to go about doing it. If you understand what the membership is, the rituals and the words that you have to use. If you understand what the influence side is, how to give every single person in that group a sense that they can influence the group and to give them roles within the group and to give them things that they can contribute to the group that are unique to them. Or to make sure that the group feels successful, that there are small victories that the group is trying to achieve and it's growing and developing and it feels like a group that people want to be along with, to be a part of. And then the emotional connection where people can share what they think or feel in a very honest way and they see that reciprocated by the other members of that group. So if you can start embedding those things into any group, you can build a very strong sense of community, which is what engagement is. I don't think it's the activity. Like engagement and activity aren't the same thing. Mm-hmm. And engagement is the most powerful thing because that's what's going to drive the activity that we want to see.
But it's really easy to measure activity.
It is.
But how can you measure the engagement? Or how can you tell what the people in your community, especially if it's online, what they're feeling?
Sure. Well, you can use the techniques that exist today. I think the challenge that we have is Google Analytics. I mean, for a lot of people that build an online community, they use Google Analytics or Facebook Insights to measure the success of their community. And those tools are great if you're trying to sell as much advertising as possible. These tools are designed for advertising. Mm-hmm. They're not designed to measure the success of a community. And that's why they only measure the metrics that advertisers want to know, clicks, likes, shares, all those things.
Right.
But they don't measure the fundamental sense of community. I think that these tools, by the way, were the worst things that happened to our online community space because it taught us that the analytics tools should be free, and they shouldn't be. Like, you have to pay for this if you want something good. It persuaded us that the analysis is easy to do because it's always presented right there for us. And I think we have to change our mindset towards that. And the way we go about doing it is understanding first a couple of things. One is, what is the goal of that community in the first place? Like, what is the change that we will see in the world? And if we're not sure what it is, then how will you know it's going to occur? Like, how will you identify that it's going on? So being able to define what that variable is. The second part, if you want to measure engagement, I would measure the psychological sense of community. There's a survey called the Psychological Sense of Community Index, which you can look up and you can download. And I would use that. And then you can get an idea of how your members feel today. Like, do they feel that they're a strong sense of community? And most importantly, this will tell you what you need to work on next, because it measures and weights the scales. So you can see, do you need to spend more time giving members a level of influence over that group? Do you need to spend more time making them feel emotionally connected to the group? So it tells you exactly what you want to be working on. And that's what I'd use.
So you think I or like every other community manager should approach directly to his members and ask them?
Yeah. I mean, how else are you going to know what members think? I mean, unless there's a tool that's been developed that I don't understand yet. I mean, there are sentiment analysis tracking tools, but it's not, I don't think, advanced enough to what we want to do. So I think it's more of a case of sending a survey once every 6 months out to your members, or using the index that we talked about, and trying to find out, do they feel a strong sense of community today? And then you can benchmark everything that you do to see if you improve that sense of community among your members. And that will give you so much useful information and will tell you if you're succeeding or not.
That's a great advice. We talk about online communities, and I wonder, in your opinion, do you think that every community must have an offline activity, or is it okay to be online only?
I think around half the communities that we've worked with are only on the internet. And the reason why that's the case, and it's interesting this question comes up so often in the last week, because I think that Israel is quite a small place where people can meet up much easier than most communities where they're flung across the entire world and it's more difficult to meet up. And there are some communities that have offline meetups. Either they have one big event a year that everyone is expected to attend, or they have these smaller events that are run by different members in different cities and all that kind of stuff. And both of those models work well, but I don't think it's essential. I think the more interesting question is, if you have an offline community first, you need a internet version of that. And I think the answer more and more is going to be probably yes, because it's very hard to get people in the real world to attend community meetings, I think. So my friend John, he's a community organizer in the town where I grew up. Mm-hmm. And his job is to get people to attend local meetings where they're going to talk about the local issues that are important to the community. So he needs to knock on doors and get people to come, and think about how hard that is. So he can't do it during the day because everyone's at work. So he has to do it in the evenings and at weekends. When is the one time you don't want to be disturbed at home?
Oh, yeah.
At the evening, at weekends, you're watching Netflix or whatever you're doing, you're going to eat. If you're at the beach, well, that's fine. I mean, who cares? But so I think the internet makes that really easy, so that you don't have to be knocking on doors anymore. People can attend when it's convenient for them. They can still have a say. They can still give their input. So I think that's a very, very interesting question. I think more and more we're going to see offline communities having an online component as well, especially what the Nextdoor platform are doing in the USA, which is getting really huge now.
Can you tell more about it?
Sure, because it's not here yet, I don't think. So Nextdoor is like a Facebook for whatever local region that you live in. And the great thing about Nextdoor is that it verifies that you live in the street or the home that you say you're in. So it's a private discussion place. And they've really cracked the ability to get people within each location to create a network and take responsibility for managing that network, to invite people to join and participate and all those things. So that's fueled this rapid expansion of what Nextdoor is. So it's been working extremely well, and it's kind of beaten most of the other hyper-local sites that were out there today. So when it launches here, as I'm sure it will in the next year or two, I think that will probably be quite popular. But I also think here, deciding the geographic boundaries of different neighborhoods and locations will be a nightmare to sort out. I think that's going to be the most difficult place in the world, right, to try and get that right.
But you mean this community is actually encouraging local offline communities, right? Yeah,
that's exactly what it does. Its goal is to use the internet to increase local participation in whatever the activities are, to try and improve your local area, your local neighborhood, whatever that's going to be.
Cool.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. Richard, you studied marketing and management, right?
Event management, yeah.
Okay. I think maybe in the world, but specifically in Israel, many people study management or communications or marketing. But most or all unis or colleges, they don't teach community management. Mm-hmm. So how can they become community managers at the end?
So my experience with university is that in terms of the knowledge that I learned, it was a complete waste of time. Like,
I agree.
There's nothing that I learned at university, with one exception. There's nothing that I learned that I use today. The exception is I had to do a couple of financial modules as well, and that I use because I run my own business. So learning what a balance sheet is and how it works and how to do all that stuff is really useful. But at the same time, university connected me with a lot of people that has really helped, and it gave me a lot of free time to just pursue what I was interested in. So that really helps. So I think if you are trying to become a community manager today, and I should say that most people don't. Like, there's very few kids today that I think are growing up thinking, when I grow up, I want to be a community manager. I don't think that's happening.
Not yet.
I think most people we know have drifted into it from another field.
Yeah.
Usually they were moved from one department to manage a new online community that the company had, or they just like the sound of the idea of doing that kind of work and they drifted into it. If you are deliberately going to try to do it, the first thing is to have some experience building a community of your own. I mean, every single person in the world today can start their own community, right? They go to Facebook groups, they can create one. It'll take them 1 minute, possibly 5. So they can get that group going, and then they can see how it works. They can see, how do you get people to join? How do you get people to participate? It's one of the most interesting things to do in the world. Like, I really like the idea of doing that. And then when it comes to applying for a job, you can say, hey, this is a community that I've developed already. You know, you can show some experience there, so it's easier to get the role. And it's even better if you know what field you really love. Then you can apply for specific community jobs within that specific role. And that's a really interesting thing to do, because when you've already built those relationships, when you've already know who the big players are, when you've got that credibility within that scene, it's a lot easier to do another community role within that same field.
How would you define the community manager role?
I think the definition is inseparable from the definition of community itself, where the goal of a community manager today is to take a group of people and build a very valuable community among them, which means they're changing the behavior of a group of individuals in a positive way. So that might be to get them to buy more of what you sell, increase loyalty, get employees to share more information with one another. So there's an infinite number of things that a community can be good for. What community managers should be very careful of is being measured by the activity. Because that's going to drive you to creating as much activity as you possibly can. And once you tell your boss, this is the activity for this last month, that's going to be what you measured against every single month. And what you learn is that it's really easy to get more activity within your community. You can be more entertaining. You can say controversial stuff. You can ask people to do less, click, like, and share instead of writing a blog post or something that will actually be useful to the entire group. So let's say, for example, you manage your community for Adobe Photoshop today, and you can create a discussion that's asking people to share their top advice for blending 2 images together in some particular way. Or you can start a discussion saying, whose head would you Photoshop onto this person's body, you know? And that last one will get you a lot more activity. But it's meaningless. I mean, who cares? I mean, it's not going to get people to buy more. But when people learn to use the tool much better, they are going to buy more. They're going to share it with their friends. But it's less activity overall. So that's why I think that the challenge is to make sure we're not just being measured by the engagement metrics, by the activity that we create, but by whatever that end result is. So the challenge is to never, ever, ever go into a meeting with your boss and talk about the level of activity, but to talk about the goals that you've achieved, the leads generated, the customers retained, the costs saved, the knowledge shared, the customer satisfaction score, whatever that goal is, that's what we want to be talking about.
Okay. And do you think anyone can be a community manager?
It's a good question. Yes, under certain conditions, I think. I don't think there's anything, like most jobs, that disqualifies someone from not being able to do it. Obviously, certain disabilities to make that more difficult. The challenge is your own personality. There's some people who are naturally born with that instinct, or maybe not naturally born, but they develop that instinct where they really want to help, and they treat every single interaction as an opportunity to increase the level of understanding, to increase the level that you can get people more engaged and to change how people feel about what you're doing. And that's a very powerful thing to have, and those people are terrific at their jobs. And then you get another type where they just want to achieve whatever the goal is, and they don't really care about the members. They're not really passionate about the topic, and it's just a job to them. Then it's more difficult. That doesn't disqualify them for doing it. It just means they have to find what excites them about doing it, and that can often be a very difficult thing. So I think everyone can do it. Whether everyone should be doing it is a different question, I think.
Okay. Now, so far you talked about communities that are selling something, or an organization and a business community. What about social communities? Because then I don't sell anything, but I still want engagement and I still want to grow my community. So what will be the challenge there, and how can we face it?
It's kind of the same thing. Like, what is the goal of your community? I mean that as a question. Like, what's the goal?
I guess supporting each other.
What does that mean? If they support each other, what will be different in the world?
So, for example, I'm managing a community of people that they want to change their career.
Got it.
For example, they studied something, but they don't want to do it anymore. And then they need support. They need new ideas. And this is a social community with no profits, but I still want more people to be there to support each other, to come to meetings.
Sure. So what I recommend is that your goal is to help people successfully change their career in some particular way. And the way you'd measure that is by post-survey feedback, I'm guessing, or interviews with members. I mean, you'll have some metric that you can work towards. So the second part of that is going to be, what do people have to do to successfully change that career? Like within the community, what would they have to do? And that'll probably be, I'm guessing, I haven't been in your community, but that'll probably be reading information, like reading useful information that's going to help them, sharing useful information. So, but that'll be something specific, like how to change your career, how to switch jobs, those kinds of things. Is there anything else?
Well, tell everyone what they do or what they like to do.
Okay, that's great. So telling everyone what they do and telling everyone what they want to do. So you've got 4 specific things that you want to change now. And now you need a strategy for each one of them, because the way you're going to get these people to do things is by figuring out what emotion is going to drive it. The mistake that a lot of people make is that they focus on the facts. They think, if I can just give people the right facts at the right time, then they'll change their behavior in some amazing way. And facts aren't persuasive. You can convince people with facts, but you can't persuade people with facts. So you have to focus on the emotion behind why they're doing it. So why would someone within your community share what they're working on now? What be the emotion behind that? And that might be because they're keen to impress one another. There's a status appeal. There might be because they're scared of being left behind. They're seeing other people get ahead and they want to catch up with them. If you want people to share information about their careers, you might make it a case where there's a jealousy side and people want to compete with one another to do it. Or you might just do the pride side. So people take pride in being able to share what they've achieved. So you break all these actions down and you figure out exactly what strategy is going to drive each of those 4 behaviors that we talked about. And then you start looking at the tactics side. So these are the things that you specifically are going to do within that community to make people feel that emotion, to execute your strategy. And let's say it's a sense of competitions, so you can get the best job. Oh, I don't know, whatever it's going to be. Then you have to start thinking about, okay, what situations made me feel this emotion? And this question is really an important question to resolve. Because when you start thinking about it, you're like, all right, when did I last feel like a sense of pride? And that might be, I felt a sense of pride when I really worked hard on a specific thing, that idea of working really hard, where I got, I received a thank you from someone that's quite high up and important or quite influential. And then you can start converting these into tactics themselves. So you want someone to work hard on something. That might be a blog post or an article, something they can keep updated, or they can share what their progress is over a period of time. When they do make a contribution, you might send them a letter from someone that's influential within the organization. So you start converting your tactics into that thing that you're actually going to do. It's going to make people feel that emotion to perform the behavior that you want to achieve that goal that you want to achieve. So this varies a little bit depending on what kind of goal you want. But fundamentally, the principles are still the same, whether you're selling something or not. And most of our work isn't actually getting people to sell more stuff. It's more customer loyalty. It's more knowledge sharing with employees, how to get colleagues to share more information. But the principles are the same. You need that goal first, which is the change you're going to make in the world. The objectives, which is the behaviors that you want people to perform. The strategy, which is the emotion that's going to drive that behavior. And then lastly, the tactics. What you're going to do to make people feel that emotion, because that's going to be such a powerful thing to be doing. So that's the process behind it. That's a long answer to your question, though.
Yeah, but actually it makes sense that, like you just said, it doesn't matter if you sell something or not.
Not really, no.
It's a lot of psychology.
Yeah. The whole thing is more psychology and more.
Did you take a course or is it natural?
No, it's a case of trying to set aside as much time as possible to learn as much as possible. There's a lot of pop psychology at the moment, like people who, without any background, and I put myself into this category as well, suddenly feel they know a lot about psychology based upon reading a couple of books on like one topic. Mm-hmm. But there's so many academic articles every single day, with new findings, and even one study doesn't prove a result. It's just one study, So it's important to be aware of that. And I think taking a course in statistics helps as well. So I take courses in psychology and statistics and try to learn as much as I can. But it's one of those things where the more you learn, the more you realize how much that you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, we can study for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely.
Do you think that, we talk about a community manager, but do you think that this person should be a manager or a leader? So where is the spot where you can take one step back and...
I think it depends on the type of community that you're working with. I think a manager is someone that has a defined amount of resources and is trying to use them as efficiently as possible. So many large established communities today need a manager. Someone that's going to keep people engaged, keep the trains running on time, make sure that the resources are used quite efficiently, that questions are being resolved and answered as well. I think a leader is more common when you're launching a community, where you need someone to create a vision of something that doesn't exist yet and tell people where you're going to go, to have that charisma, to have that ability to make people want to participate in this community, who can build relationships, who has an understanding of what people want and knows how to lead them through a process of how they get there. So I think being a leader is good as long as it's not about you, which is quite common as well. Like getting respect and appreciation is a very dangerous drug. And you can become addicted to it really easily and accidentally make an entire community about you and the work that you do. So try and avoid that. Just be aware of that. But I think we need more leaders today and less managers.
Okay. What are the trends you see lately in the community managers world?
Online or offline?
Online.
Online. Facebook groups is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Most people that are launching a community today are going to use Facebook groups. And there are two reasons. One, it's free for now. And two, that viral effect of being able to get a community off the ground so quickly is such a useful thing to have. And it's great. It's a great tool for getting a group to get going. The downside is that you can't document information well. It's very hard to search for things. Discussions get pushed off the page really quickly. You can't brand it the way you like. You can't have an onboarding journey the way that you like. So there's lots of things that you can't do. And ultimately, you don't control the platform itself. So Facebook might decide to charge people for sending updates, or just like what they've done with a Facebook fan page.
Yeah.
So that's a risk. But having said that, I don't think that they will do it, but I've been wrong in the past. So I think that's the first trend. The second one is that I think we have to be better at explaining what the value of a community is to our boss and the colleagues and the people that we work with. Because a lot of organizations are happy to invest in a community when things are going well. But when those bad times occur, the community is one of the first things that usually gets cut. And there's not enough attempt, I find, for community professionals to build internal relationships. They often spend so much time participating in their online community, trying to get the community as engaged as it can possibly be, that they forget that the company has to be as equally engaged as well. And that means you have to go to the meetings of the other departments that are out there, not to say how amazing the community is, but simply to learn. Like, what do they need from that online community? We were at Microsoft a couple of months ago, and they were telling me the challenge they had is that their engineering team was ignoring all the feedback that came from the community. And what they found, just by going to the meetings of the engineering team, not to speak, but just to listen, is that they were sending all this information, all the feedback at the wrong time. And when they sent it at the beginning of the engineering sprint, the point at which the engineers decide what they're going to work on, and then they work on it really in a really intense way for a while, then the engineers can use it. They can use that information. So instantly, just by that one change, the community, without being more engaged, more active, became far more valuable to the organization. And the challenge is to work internally to build as many of these mini alliances as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. So everyone is getting value from that community, because that's a really useful thing to have. I think that's an incredibly powerful thing to have. And the third one that I think is a really important one to point out is the war for attention, especially on the internet, is ferocious, and it's only going to get worse. It's going to be the most challenging thing around, I think, to keep someone's attention on the internet to participate in your community, especially against the other communities that are out there today, the other things that people can do on the internet. I think it's going to be a really tough challenge to crack.
Do you have a tip how to crack it?
Yes, I mean, I think we prioritize the things that reflect what our internal goals are, what our identities are. So by that, I mean, if I'm engaged in something, if I have a unique role within a group, I'm far more likely to spend time doing that than I am to watch the top 10 car chases on YouTube or whatever I could be doing. So the challenge is a couple of things. One is to make sure everyone within the group has a unique role based upon their skills, experience, expertise, their resources, whatever they've done in the past. The second one is to build a strong sense of community among them. So with that idea of the membership, the rituals and traditions, the integration of needs, making sure that the community feels like it is a success, and the emotional connection. And then by making sure that that the community itself is as relevant to the members as possible. What I mean is, a lot of organizations, they will start a community with a really big goal. You know, this community is going to change the world, end poverty, or whatever it's going to be. And the problem with that, and this happened just the other week with a client that we were working with, it was an internal community. And they had a really big, great goal, which is to break down all the knowledge silos within the organization. And so everyone's going to share and collaborate. It'll be much better. It'll be fantastic. And every employee thought this was a great idea. But when it came time to participating, they never found the time to do it. And the reason is because it's not relevant to them today. When we interview people about joining a new online community, or we're just coming up with the idea, we try and ask them, what are you working on today? Right now, what are you working on? Because my goal might be, say, to improve the design of my website, but my action today is I need to find a great designer. Who do you recommend? Who has a recommended list, of designers that you trust? So there's usually a big gap between that big goal and that daily relevance right now. And the communities have to push more towards being relevant right now if people are going to engage in them in the future.
It's like one step at a time.
Absolutely.
Great. It's funny you mentioned Facebook, because my next question was, do you think we can create communities without Facebook?
Of course. I mean, we've been doing that for like centuries now, So I don't think you need Facebook to create a community. I think if you are looking for a digital tool that you're going to use, I think Facebook is a good one. WhatsApp is a good one, like the WhatsApp groups, because it's what the habit is today. And that might change. I mean, our habits might change, and if that's the case, then the community platform will change as well. But for right now, it's probably the tool that most people should use if you don't have much money. If you do have some money, then I'd start looking at Lithium, Jive, Higher Logic, Intelligent as well, because these platforms offer more in the way of security, branding. You can do more of what you want. And there's some good open source platforms as well, like Vanilla and Discourse.
Okay, so there are a lot of options, but you think Facebook is good for the...
Yeah, I think Facebook is good
if you don't have a budget.
If you don't have much money, and if you are just trying to get that group off the ground. I think it's good for those two things. If you want more, Facebook is not good.
Is it not very hard to get people to use a tool that they're not using anyway? Like everyone, they're on Facebook. Yeah. So it's easy, just add them to the group. Yeah,
that's a challenge. And that's been the challenge for years and years and years, That's why Facebook have so fundamentally have changed this. If you look at platforms like Reddit, Stack Exchange, and ones that are similar to that, where you've got one platform but multiple communities based on that one platform, then it becomes a different proposition because it's in the habit of what we go into. But some platforms, Discourse and Higher Logic and a few others, where you'll be notified of a new message in your inbox today, and you can reply to that, and that will go to the community, and you don't have to visit the community itself. So that's a very powerful tool because it's within the workflow that you have right now. So that helps. But if that's not what you're going to do, then getting people to visit a site that they don't visit at the moment is tough. But that's the challenge, building that habit of going there, of doing that and seeing. And that means designing what those first couple of weeks are going to look like. What happens on day one when someone joins? What happens on day 2, day 5, day 8? For the first 3 weeks or so, and then usually they should become a regular member as a result.
So you think there is no room for spontaneous? I mean, when you want to create a community, you have to arrange everything in advance.
You don't have to, but I think it helps. You can leave things to luck and chance, and sometimes that works. But luck isn't a good strategy, I don't think. I don't think it's a good way of building a community
or living the life.
Yeah, so I like being more deliberate in what we're going to do, and you're going to have to change and adapt a lot. I mean, and the first concept that you try out might not work. But if you start small and if you test whatever concept you're going to do in a very small group to begin with, then you can start testing to see what works, and you can find what works and then grow based upon that. So it's not something that you get right the very first time. It's usually something you get right over a period of time.
Okay. Can you tell about the ABCD?
ABCD. This, I think, is the most important concept in community development today. And we touched upon it before, I think.
Yeah.
So this stands for Asset-Based Community Development. This was a concept developed by John McKnight in 1970 something. I've forgotten the exact date. This is the idea. The way that most people used to look at building a community in the real world is that they'd figure out what the problem is, then try and get people together to resolve that problem. But the problem with that is that it always looked at the community through whatever their deficiency was. What A, B, C, D does is that if it kind of flips that, where instead of figuring out what the problems are, you figure out what the opportunities are. So that what I mean in a very tangible sense is that you figure out what assets are in the community now. So with every single member in your community today, what are their unique skills, experience, expertise, resources? What can they offer towards that particular group? And this is a really powerful thing to do, because everyone wants to make a unique, useful contribution to that group. So if I were to poll your audience at the moment, some people would have backgrounds in marketing, maybe PR, technology, security, accountancy, lawyer, doctors, nurses, all these kind of things. It'd be a whole gamut of things. Some of them would have spare rooms or a car that they can loan out. They'd have a lot of resources as well. And there's a case of thinking, okay, with all these assets we have, how can we combine them to realize new opportunities? So if someone is an expert on accounting today, can they give a short talk at like the next meeting? Is there a blog article that they can write about it that's relevant to your community as well? So with each one of these resources you have and the assets you have, how can you use them to improve the entire group? How can you give more attention to each one of them? How can you make sure the whole group is going to benefit from every individual skill? And a big part of that is changing the message that you use when they join. So you don't tell people what to do, but instead you ask them, what can you offer this community today? What do you want to achieve within this community today? Because these kinds of questions are so useful in the work that you do.
Beautiful. You spent the last week here in Israel.
I did. It's
and I wonder what you think about the Israeli scene.
I think the Israeli scene is fantastic because we spend so much time dealing with the digital side of communities, because this is where most of the money, unfortunately, is for us. And it's great to do that work, but I've loved learning so much about the communities that are here today, the offline communities especially, and that real world change. I think that's such amazing, such valuable work to be doing. I think we're seeing that the people here generally don't have as much money as what we're seeing in other organizations, but they're more passionate and they're scrappy, they're more innovative. And that I really like. I like that there's people that genuinely want to get the work done. They're going to use a tool that makes sense for them. So I really like that. It's a very strong scene as well, where everyone seems to know each other quite well. So I think that really helps as well, because you've got this own community of people that are building the communities here. And I think that's an amazing thing to have. I think that really helps. You can share expertise with one another, give emotional support to one another. So I think that really, really helps. And it's been an amazing week to be here. Like, it's really been great.
It's good to hear. We're almost done.
Okay.
But I have a final question,
sure,
which I ask everyone here. So the question is, if tomorrow you will have the chance to build a new community, and you have all the time and the money in the world, what would it be?
All the time and money in the world and could build a community. I don't know anyone building a community today that has all the time and the money in the world. That's a good question. I think I'm very interested in communities that are going to connect people that haven't had the opportunity to connect before, people that are very lonely in the worlds that they live in, and to figure out what kinds of groups there are. So there's lots of groups that don't get any support because what makes them lonely in the first place is so unique to them. There aren't many people like them in the world. And if there are, they're spread around so many parts of the world as well, that different languages and all that. So there's no way they can easily connect. So I'd be very interested in that group. I'm also very interested in people that have a certain lifestyle, and the communities that exist today. This is why this question is so hard to answer, because all these communities exist today. Like, there aren't many ideas that don't have a community around yet. But I think there's a group of people today around my age, people that tend to travel a lot, they work across different parts of the world, whose lifestyles are different from what came before in terms of how they live, how they behave, and how they work. And I'm really, really interested in the power of this group to get together to advocate for change that we need. Because I think at the moment, with all the politics in the world and all these things that's going on in the UK, the USA, here, and everywhere else, I think that middle voice is being lost, that like moderate voice is being lost. And I'd love to find a way to connect this group around a common interest, I think. Yeah.
Sound interesting.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't put too much thought into that, but yeah, that would be it, I think.
Great. Rich, thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you for welcoming me onto the podcast.
Sure. And I hope you can enjoy the rest of your visit here in Israel.
Thank you.
In the air conditioning.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'll see you.
Thank you very much. I'll speak to you soon.
Are you down?